Welcome to the Coach's Edge podcast, dedicated to teaching, sharing, and learning the game. Thanks for joining me today. I'm your host, Steve Kramer of Kramer Basketball and the Coach's Edge. And on this episode, we are talking about advice and tips for basketball coaches, whether you're a first-year head coach or whether you have coaching experience, but maybe you're taking over a new team or a new program. And we brought in a couple awesome coaches to talk with you on that specific subject. Anthony Troshak, Charlevoix boys basketball varsity coach. Chuck Arnold, Unionville Sebring area girls basketball varsity coach. This is a dynamite episode. I can't wait to get into it. But before that, a quick word. This episode is brought to you by coachesedge.coach, your all-in-one coaching resource, whether it's player development, strength and conditioning, its own basketball app, monthly Zoom meetings, and more. If you have questions about coachesedge.coach, just reach out, contact at kramerbasketball.com or go to coachesedge.coach to get started. And we are back. So coaches, thanks for jumping in. I'm going to have each of you introduce yourself real quickly, talk a little bit about some of your background and your coaching stops. And then I'm looking forward to ping-ponging this subject back and forth with each other because it is mid-August. The school year is about to get started, and we have a lot of coaches that are listening that may be in the shoes of the topic today, taking over a new program, first-year coach, and I know you guys have a ton of experience in this area, and you can definitely offer some advice. So, Coach Chuck Arnold, thanks for being on, and I'll let you go first.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having us on. Man, that coaching list is a long list for me. I've been around. I guess I was in Texas at a 6A high school basketball program at Katy, Texas before going overseas. And then overseas, I was a U20 state team coach in Penang, Malaysia. Was the head basketball coach at Delata International School. Came back to Texas, and then I was at Peyto High School, which I was the first assistant there, where we ended up top 5 team in the state. And then ended up getting a head coaching position over at a brand new high school in the southwest side of Houston. But then I got offered the job here at USA, my hometown, principal and head girls basketball coach. So we ended up making that move back up here last year and took over the girls basketball head coaching position up here.
Awesome. Around the world and back all the way home. I love it. Coach Troshak, how about yourself?
Can you hear me? All right, I'll do that again. All right. Well, my list isn't quite as long as Coach Arnold's, but I coached 1 year JV at a very small school in the thumb of Michigan, the tip of the thumb, Caseville. Coached 1 year JV there, and then I somehow landed the varsity job there. Coached 3 years varsity there, and then about an hour south in the thumb of Michigan, another smaller school, a little bigger than Caseville, but a Class C school. So for those listeners, we graduated about 60 to 70 kids per class in Brown City, and I was there for 7 years. And then me and my family made the move up to northern Michigan because that's where my wife is from. It's beautiful. It's an awesome area. We're really thankful to be here. And I coached 8th grade boys basketball last year at Charlevoix, which again, it's a smaller school, Class C. So we graduate between 60 and 75 kids. And then I've been blessed to get the opportunity to take over the boys basketball program and coach the varsity next season. So I'm looking forward to it, looking forward to diving in here and kind of bounce some ideas off you guys and, sharing what I've learned. It's definitely experience. And I think we'll probably talk about it, but every stop has been different. And I know Coach Arnold would agree that, not all the places are the same. It's a different team every year. It's a different program. So I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Awesome. Great stuff. So Coach Arnold, I'll throw this first one back to you, and then Coach Tro, you can piggyback off it. But when you simply hear the sentence, you're taking over a new basketball program, what are some of the first things that come to mind?
First thing that comes to my mind is evaluation, like just observing and seeing what players we have to work with and just where we're at. Because that understanding where we're at helps me set expectations and goals to pick one or two things that we can try to work on immediately and that we can build on for the future.
And I would 100% agree with Coach Arnold in kind of having a feel out phase is what I would call it. And also, one of the first things that I think of it is connecting before coaching. And that's connection with players. That's connection with the current staff. That's connection with alumni, with administration, within the community, just being able to make those connections before you kind of dive into it. Kind of like what Coach was talking about, evaluating what you have and connecting with people, building relationships before actually the coaching begins, because then you have kind of a baseline for where you're at.
So Coach Straw, I'll fire this one back to you first. When it comes to, great stuff, evaluating, again, you're not going to have, the goals of a state championship team if your team was 0-20, right? And you're just trying to figure out who's going to come out and play for the team. So I think that's huge pieces, obviously connecting with people around you. I love that. Coach Straw, everybody talks about culture. Everybody talks about leadership. People use different terms, pillars, non-negotiables, values. What are some of the things that you try to instill, especially in that first year as a head coach with your team?
Well, it even started this summer. I was lucky enough to be on staff last year as an assistant for the varsity. So I coached 8th grade and our season got done right before Christmas break. Then I was able to jump in with the varsity. I kind of went to both practices during the summer, but jumped with them. So I kind of knew what we had. And some emphasis that I had this summer was, one, we're always going to be the hardest working team. Like when we step on the floor, it doesn't matter what the score is, we're going to be the hardest working team. And then I kind of defined that a little. We didn't have a lot of time in the summer to sit down and have meetings, but that was one thing. Another thing was no hanging our heads. I felt that that's something that we needed to improve in as a program. There's a lot of, guys that would get down on themselves if they made a mistake. So I wanted to create an environment where they understood mistakes are okay. We learn from them, failure is your, first attempt in learning type of thing. And then also, nothing works unless you work. I know you've said that before. This might be where I got it from, actually, Coach Kramer, but we have to put in the work because nothing's going to work. Whatever I bring to the program or we add or we change or we keep, nothing's going to work unless they work. And then one of the last things, and I tried to hammer these, and I talked to them, every time we kind of met this summer, every time I saw them. And, before scrimmage, the last one was, if you're not prepared to put the team first, you need to turn around. All right, we're team first. That's how we're going to operate. And that's how we're going to be successful. And those were kind of what I focused on this summer. As we go into next year, a couple things I'm actually working on a plan of, like, what do I want us to be about? And some things I have is grit. Some things I have is competitive, and also joy. Like having fun, not just goofing around having fun, but like bringing joy and passion and being excited about somebody else's success, one of your teammates' success, and celebrating those things. Like, we're going to celebrate success. We're going to celebrate even if it's little wins in practice or off the court or in the classroom. We're going to do that, and that's going to be part of our culture. And I guess another one is gratitude. I think that's huge. That's kind of one of my core values as a person. That's one that is almost non-negotiable. And with saying that, I'm sorry, it's probably a long answer, but other core values I want the players to kind of take ownership of. So I'm going to ask them their input. Us coaches, me, my assistant coaches, JV coaches, we might give, 3 core values that we're going to talk about, and then have the players choose 2. And I wouldn't go more than 5 or 6 because that's just too many to remember. These kids should know it. They should be able to recite it. And they should know what the program's about when they put on that jersey.
I absolutely love it. Coach Arnold, how about yourself when it comes to helping build and establish a new culture and values with your current team?
I heard Coach Troshak just say a lot of really good stuff. Just having that pure appreciation for being out there. And for me, it's not necessarily basketball as a sport, but it's that appreciation for being able to get out there and give your best and be able to compete and to work to accomplish something bigger than yourself. I think is something that's really important. For us, it's always a big theme that we always talk about is progression over perfection. We're always, as hard as it may be, like I genuinely don't usually pay as much attention to the scoreboard as much as I do as far as our own improvement from day to day. And that's something that's really important to me is I'm perfectly at peace with going into a game and losing a game and seeing our players just play outstanding and improve in a few specific areas that we've been working on in practice. One of the things coming in at the level that these girls were at, I constantly told them throughout the season is there were some frustrating moments, and the question was, well, how can you not get frustrated at some of those things out there? And I just flat out said I can never get mad at my players for not doing something that we haven't done in practice. And so that's something that's a reoccurring thing with us, is we always strive for progression over perfection.
I love that, progression over perfection. In the very beginning, Coach Arnold, you talked about the evaluation phase and how that helps you establish expectations and goals. How does that start to translate into how you decide as a new coach with a new program what your style of play is going to look like?
Well, I think the first thing is, and I admittedly, I didn't do it perfectly this past year. Coaching girls for the first time was a big adjustment. I'm coming from a school that just had the floodgates were open as far as athletes. I mean, almost everybody was getting their head above the rim, and the pace. I mean, we ran a dribble drive, and a lot of our offense was predicated on creating more spacing so our guys could go to work. And then you're going into a situation where you don't have a lot of skill level. The pace is a lot slower. There's a lot more. There's not as much basketball IQ. And so it was the evaluation phase of it, I would say, probably took almost all season long to figure out where we were at skill wise and what we could actually do. So I would say it took the entire season, because what I came in with was just some of the basic dribble drive fundamentals. But towards the end of the season, I'm already starting to adjust and starting to feel out the adjustments that we need to make this next year going into the season to be able to help our girls be more successful.
I love it. That's a lot of the live and learn right there as you're going into new charting uncharted territory there. Coach Tro, how about yourself?
Yeah, like Coach Arnold said, evaluating, and I don't know, Coach Arnold, did you have any time in the summer with them or any time before you jumped into your season last year? No. So I have a little advantage of that, having them for summer basketball and also being on staff last year. So I kind of know what we have. And, as a coach, and any coach listening out there, you have to coach different every year. I mean, every year is a little different. It's getting that group to maximize their ability. I'm not saying you have to change your whole system every single year. No, not at all. I'm just saying you might have to tweak stuff. Everything every year is going to be different. Or you look at a chunk like, hey, we got some classes coming through that are very athletic. We got some classes coming through that size. We have class coming through that doesn't have size and speed. Whatever your evaluation is, kind of plan for the future too. But with that being said, we do lack size. We are athletic. I would say a lot of our players, basketball is their second or third sport, but they're athletic. They get in the weight room. So for me as a coach, I have to look, how can I put them in the best situation to be successful? And that is, for me, it's like, let them be athletes. So we're going to try to push pace. We're going to try to pressure and disrupt because that's what they're good at. And also, quite frankly, there's less thinking involved. Like, reading a screen is difficult. Do I pop? Do I curl? Do I flander? You can teach them that stuff. But it's easier. Let's get up and down, and let's push base and let's try to go against the defense that is never set. And then on the defensive side, let's always disrupt. And that way we don't have to, think about how we're going to 3 different ways to cover a ball screen. Let's just be athletes and falter. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm sure that we'll fail at times. And, like Coach said, it's all about reevaluating, making tweaks and improving each day. And I love that phrase of progress over perfection. I typed it in my notes already, Coach. That's great stuff.
Coach Tro, I'm going to throw this one back to you again. For many coaches listening, if they're taking over a new team or even a new program, they may feel a little more comfortable. They probably do feel a lot more comfortable on the basketball side of things than in some of the community, the relationships with the parents aspect, especially if they haven't done that before. Do you have any tips of advice or things that you found to be successful when it comes to being a new coach and establishing standards and positive relationships with parents?
Parents are a huge part of your program. There's that old kind of way of thinking where the parents are separate, they're not part of your program. I'm not going to talk to parents. I'm not going to do the thing. I'm on the opposite, where I think they need to involve. They're a huge part. They can be, extremely supportive in different endeavors that you do. And the big thing is, as a parent myself, and as a parent, you as parents, knowing like, what do you want your son or daughter's experience to be? And if you see somebody that gives them confidence, that teaches them, that holds them to a standard, but is demanding but not demeaning, all those things, that's what I want my daughters. That's who I want my daughters to play for. So becoming like looking at yourself like, am I a coach that I would want my kids to play for? And that's one thing. And then kind of spitballing here, but also getting involved in, like, do you have a youth program? That's a great way to meet parents, younger parents. Are you running a basketball camp? Do you have your youth program set up in the winter? Do you have like a 3-on-3? Getting youth involved is a great way to meet parents. It's a little tougher to meet parents maybe I'm wrong, but as they're, as players are in high school, they're busy, things like that. You don't see them as much. That the parents are going to be there for youth basketball. They're dropping them off. You see them at basketball camp and they drop them off. Creative players that can drive themselves. It's a little tougher to make those connections, but you can do those through, parent meetings, team dinners, and anyway, we're lucky. I'm lucky here. We have great parents, and they already have been involved and they're willing to, do dinners or help out in any way possible. So.
I love that. And Coach Arnold, you can piggyback on this right here, but I talked with a couple different parents and they were raving about some of the winter youth basketball programming that you had basically kicked up and started once again at Unionville Seaway Schools, which, right to what Coach Troshak said, is a great way to start to build that positive community and relationship with parents.
Well, our youth program is just a spin-off of Kramer basketball camp. So that's we just continue that season on a little bit longer. But everything Coach Troshak just said was spot on. I mean, the relationship aspect of it is important. And I think that one of the things that we do is one of the most valuable parts of our season is our parent meeting. I have a parent packet that we go over. Parents are required to be there. I have a 10 commandments of being a great team parent that we go over with the parents and the players. And basically it's all around being supportive. I'm big on being transparent. Like we never have anything to hide. If a parent wants to come in and watch practice, our practices are never closed. They can always come in. Nobody's come in yet, but that's certainly something that's always welcome, and just building their trust and those relationships, I think, is huge.
Another huge piece of building that program is the relationships that you have with your coaches from the youth level, junior high level, to your high school coaches and varsity assistants. as a new coach, you're probably bringing some of your own staff in. At the same time, there's probably coaches that have been coaching at various levels for a while now. Coach Arnold, you're now kind of the boss of my dad, who's been a junior high coach, and I know he's jumping in and helping you out a little bit as well. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of establishing those relationships with both new and experienced coaches at your school, and maybe anything that you've done in the past that you found successful?
Yeah, that's been a tough one, because coming from our programs down in Texas where coaching sports is ingrained into the curriculum, it becomes a little bit easier when you're the head coach of a program. It's expected that the junior high coaches are underneath you and directly follow the program that you want to implement. Here it's been coming in here, it's been a lot of coaches for I don't know how many years have all been on an island. And so it was a big change when they saw me being involved in the junior high program, and then observing our JV program and just kind of evaluating. And just the one thing that was a non-negotiable for me is that we have to be aligned. We have to be aligned from the youngest team, from youth programs all the way up. We have to understand the specific skills that we're looking to build and develop throughout the junior high all the way up, so that when they get to the JV and varsity level, we're continuing to progress instead of having to reteach certain concepts. So that is exactly what you said. Is we've adjusted some of our coaches. We're going to have some coaches trainings coming up. Your dad's been huge coming in. I'm trying to get him up more, but he's hesitant to commit to more, but trying to get him in there as much as possible as well. Just getting that extra support as far as people that know the level of skill development that are there for the right reasons, that are there to help develop young players, as opposed to coming in and are on their island trying to win a championship. So I'm sorry, but 7th grade girls basketball championship is not that big of a deal. So I getting some people in there that have that perspective. We're trying to develop those skills to help out the varsity in the future.
100% getting the right pieces in place. And you mentioned progression over perfection, and that's what it is, especially at the youth levels. Progress, step by step. I love it. Coach Troshak, how about yourself?
Yeah, getting everyone aligned. As Coach talked about, especially in smaller schools, it's tough to just find coaches. Like, you might get a parent that does it for a couple of years because they have a son or daughter that's going to do junior high, so they coach from 7th and 8th grade. But if you can find people in the community, I think it's gold. If you can find quality middle school coaches, they're important. They're vital. They have to kind of have energy. I feel like, if I had to pick one, area where the most important it would be middle school coaching. And they're the ones that are usually involved for that player's like first love or their first memory of basketball. So getting them and anything that you can do to help them out, whether it's, showing them a video of what the varsity does. And then one thing I've done in the past and plan on doing this year, is I'm going to bring the varsity into the middle school practices, and we're going to run a practice once. And that's part of its culture, and also just, being able to show, hey, middle school players, this is what we do. This is what we're about. You guys are doing the exact same thing. You're going to be doing this. You're going to be learning these skills. And I think that's important. That Coach Arnold said is like, what skills do you need? And those middle school coaches need to know that, because there's a million different skills out there. They could be teaching, but what are the most important to their development in terms of getting all your coaches on the same page? But like I mentioned, it's tough to get, coaches. A lot of people are busy. They can't make it right after work, or right after school. Times are challenging. So that is one challenge I've faced so far.
Coach Sherrill, how do you balance the challenge of coming into a program and you have your own strengths and weaknesses as a coach? you have maybe a expertise in a certain style of offense or defense that you're really partial to. How do you balance your personal strengths and weaknesses and maybe likes and dislikes as far as style of play to looking at your new players and understanding what their own strengths and weaknesses are? I know that's maybe not the best phrased question, and there's probably no perfect answer to it either.
No, I kind of understand where you're going with that, and that's a challenge that I am facing with the personnel we have this upcoming year, and about the next couple of years will be balanced, which is a good thing. And also, like I said, we're going to try to play fast, which I haven't had the opportunity, or maybe I just never did it with past teams. So you guys were talking, we were kind of chatting before this podcast started about, Coach Bone and Coach Gameforth and how they said, man, we're such better coaches now. And I look at that and I go, how can I speed that process up? Because I know we're going to play a little faster. We're going to use our athletes a little better, now for the next 4 or 5 years and, down the pipe. But I haven't done this before. So how can I speed up that process? And the best way that I know how to speed up this process is talking with other coaches, picking their brains that have done that, bringing them in. We brought in a former coach that coaches Charleroi and St. Francis, Keith Haskey. I'm actually hopefully going to meet with him next week and just pick their brains. Also having people on staff, a player that played for Coach Haskey and they made a state title run. He played in the state championship. He's going to most likely be our varsity assistant. So he's familiar with that. So getting those pieces around you to support you that are going to offset maybe, my weaknesses, and they're going to bring up those because they have a little more knowledge of the way the style that we're trying to play. But definitely picking the brains of people that have played that style or that way before, kind of helps you, I guess, make up for those weaknesses.
I love it. Coach Arnold, how about yourself? How do you balance your own coaching strengths and weaknesses to the players and some of their strengths and weaknesses, especially if they don't necessarily align?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. Coming into it, just kind of knowing the way I am as a coach is I just I want everything fast paced. I want the processing. I want players knowing before the ball touches their hands whether they're going to shoot or dribble or pass. I want that processing speed to be a lot quicker. I want to get up and down the court. And then coming in here, that's not what I have to work with. And so the exciting part about it, and that's something that I've come to the realization this summer, is that as a experienced coach, I've had to learn all over again. And so the fun part about that is being able to get excited about learning new things. And like Coach said too, start talking to as many experienced coaches as possible and just picking their brains who have been in this situation, talking with successful girls coaches that know how much different coaching girls is than boys, and just learning from that. Getting into, I've never been so excited for the coaching clinics coming up, and just because I need to learn. I need to get some new ideas. And Coach said it well too. Is you got to surround yourself by people that can fill those weaknesses as well. So I've been looking at a couple of coaches that I'm hoping to bring in. Your dad's one of them too. That's very knowledgeable. That's got a solid mind. That is strong. That's strong in areas that I'm a little bit weaker in.
I love it. And what you talked about, the processing speed, and not to get too much on a side tangent, but we ran Thumb Pride basketball camp at USA schools maybe about a month ago now. And we brought Coach Arnold in the very first day on Monday to talk to about 40 of our junior high players and about 20 plus of our high school players on FIBA 3-on-3. And so the first day we brought him in to talk about that, explain the rules, everything that goes into it, the benefits, the processing, just playing fast, quick decisions. And the rest of the week, we played FIBA 3-on-3. The only thing we didn't do was the shot clock, just because we didn't have the capabilities of that. Kids loved it. It was awesome. And that was awesome to see how the kids, they literally in 4 days, they got better in 4 days. It was so cool to be able to bring our kids in at different moments throughout when we were playing, and to be able to tell them, listen, you weren't even, it was Wednesday, you weren't doing that on Monday. It's Thursday. You weren't doing that on Tuesday. Look what you've done. But they're able to get so many more repetitions in. It's almost like basketball on steroids in the sense of just being of how fast FIBA 3-on-3 is. So we combine that with obviously all the skill development that we're running at our camps. It was just really, really awesome to see. And so that was a huge, so if for any of our listeners, especially in Michigan, or you get a chance to bring in Coach Arnold, have him teach you some details of FIBA 3-on-3. It's definitely time well spent. I know our players got a lot better because of it, and some we'll continue to use throughout the course of the year with the players that I work with. Now, coaches, what are a couple things that are staples that we haven't necessarily touched on, but maybe some overarching pieces of advice? You're talking to a new coach, first time head coaching job, right? You guys have bounced around a handful of schools, even a handful of countries. You're saying, make sure you do this, or make sure you don't do this.
I'll jump in with one, and then maybe Coach will have another one. Maybe I'll remember one. But this goes for, a coach taking over a new program, or even a coach coming back the next year, is every team is different. I kind of mentioned that. And oftentimes us coaches, we will, that first day of practice, that first week of practice, we remember how it was at the end of last season, because that's what's ingrained in our mind. And it was probably like a fluid, like we had, practice was fluid. Everything was fluid. Guys knew what to do. Girls knew what to do. They knew the routine. They knew our expectations. And you have to kind of clear that slate, and you have to remember where you started. And that's the big thing. Like, coach, this isn't your first program you've taken over. This isn't the first program I've had the opportunity to take over. Coach out there listening, it might be your first one, but then think back to your first job, a coaching job, and think of like where you were and what got you to that later, that picture that's in your mind. That's at least helped me, because oftentimes early on in my career, even from year to year, I'd come in, and the first week of practice, I'd be like, man, we're so far behind, or I'm so frustrated. But I had to remember like where we started at the beginning of last year, how long it took us to get where we were at the end of the year. So that'd be one thing, like Coach talked about, progress. We're working on progress, we're trying to get better each day. And if you do that, then you're gonna be better at the end of the season. You're gonna put your best team out there on the floor.
I'm going to jump in before Coach Arnold mentions something. I think that is so valuable, and I have to remind myself of that, even running basketball camps. And okay, I've been running basketball camps since 2008. So when I go and I'm running a basketball camp, I'm like, man, they're not getting it fast enough. They're not getting it fast enough. And I have to remind myself, oh, this may be your 15th year running basketball camps. This is this kid's first basketball camp. He's not supposed to, or she's not supposed to get it fast. That's not how this works. Just because you've been coaching for a longer period of time, a lot of times we expect our kids to be able to pick up some things and run with it right away. It's like, no, this might be your player's first ever time playing on a varsity team. And if it's not, they've really only been playing basketball at the varsity level for 2 or 3 seasons. That's nothing compared to coaching the game for decades and being involved for a long period of time. And so I just love that you mentioned that, because I know I have to keep reminding myself of those things. And I'm not even a head basketball coach right now.
Yeah, I third that is that what you said previously is that oftentimes I'm thinking throughout the season, oh, we're so far behind. But then having that perspective of where we started and where you finished off. One of the things I thought it being most new head coaches are going to go into that first experience and they're going to have this awesome plan. They're going to spend so many hours developing this perfect practice plan, the perfect coach's handbook or player's handbook or whatever. And then you're going to get into the season. And what I would say is just be ready to make adjustments on the fly. Like don't don't have that tunnel vision of thinking that just because you wrote it down on paper, yes, Coach Kramer just did it. Be ready to tear that practice plan apart and start over. I think that's important. In all my years of organizing events, I always tell people when we get into it, we got a plan in place, and I'm sure we missed something. So just be ready to make adjustments on the fly.
Yeah, and going along with that, Coach, sorry, but there's the saying is you're never as good as when you win, never as bad as when you lose. And as a coach taking over a program, you got to remember that it's not about winning and losing. It's about, are we getting better? So if you have a bad night, you can't just scrap what you had. You can't just be like, oh, we got to go in a complete different direction. We lost 2 games in a row. Like, no, you got to stick to what you think is best for the team. And on the flip side, like, oh, we won a couple of games. We have success. This is great. You got to be afraid of what's next. Like, have people poke holes in your plan. All right, we beat them the first time around doing this against a certain team, running this defense against them, or taking away this strength. We feel good about ourselves. But what about when we play them the second time around? So being prepared for that, and not just, constantly being on this roller coaster of we got to change this, we got to change that, based on winning and losing. You could do it based on, progress. If you're not seeing any progress in your players, then yeah, maybe you're gonna have to change something up.
Great stuff. Coach Tro, I'm going to throw this last one back to you. Last piece of advice, like 2 sentences to a new basketball coach. What do you say to him?
Have fun. Definitely have fun. Build relationships, and then, find a way to celebrate little success. Whether that is practice success, but find ways to celebrate that success and bring joy, with the players and with the staff you're around. That's a real tough question. I'm sorry, Coach. I wish I had something better for you. And then last but not least, it kind of just popped in my head is, take some time to take a break every once in a while, even during the season. Like, I'm going to take, this Sunday, I'm not doing anything for basketball wise, because I feel, especially early, you're taking over a program, it's easy to burn yourself out. Spend time with your family, spend time with yourself, and take care of yourself too, because ultimately you are hired for your brain, right? Like, you're hired for your brain. And if your brain isn't at its peak, then you're not doing your best job. So if you're not getting good sleep, if you're not eating right, if you're not exercising, if you're not doing some things that you enjoy, like spending time with family, you're cheating your coaching, because that's what you're hired for. You're hired for ultimately your brain. You got to take care of your body. You got to take care of your mind. Sorry, those longer than 2 sentences. You know me.
Well, that's what happens when you're a basketball coach. You talk a lot. That's why we got this podcast. So, Coach Arnold, go ahead.
Well, I think Coach said it all really well right there. And the only thing I would add to it is just enjoy the experience. Just always remember why you're there in the first place, and it's to be there for the kids and help the kids accomplish great things. And it's because you got a passion. So you've made it there, and just enjoy that experience of being a head coach, forming a program, and helping a team get better.
Man, this was awesome. I can't thank you guys enough. I got better just listening to you guys go back and forth, talking about just a handful of topics. We could go on and on for hours with all the things that go into not just being a coach, but taking over a new program with new team, new players, new community. So I can't thank you guys enough for taking the time out of your evening to be on the podcast. I know we helped quite a few listeners out there. To our listeners, thank you very much for listening. And to our assistant coaches out there that are listening, I can tell you firsthand. I mean, I was a head coach in Germany for a couple of years, but I wasn't running a program. I was just a head coach of a team. And when I came to the U.S. and had a handful of coaching experiences as an assistant, to make this super short, if you're an assistant coach listening, just find the need. Find the need. Like communicate early and often with your head coach. Don't pretend that you know it all and know all the needs. Talk to the head coach, figure out what's the best place that you can be used, given maybe some of the holes within the program, as well as your own strengths and weaknesses. Be who you are, be honest with the coaching staff about your own strengths and weaknesses, and then go at it hard with how you can best serve that head coach and those kids on that specific team. And I think you'll find yourself in a pretty good spot and learning quite a bit along the way as an assistant coach who's probably looking to be a varsity coach someday as well. So that's a quick piece as far as our assistant coaches listening as well. Coaches, thanks for taking the time to be on the Coach's Edge. Appreciate you. And we'll talk to you very soon.